Well, what do you know? Right after the most public display of grief over his wife's death that Kayce Dutton has yet allowed, who comes moseying over the hill and back into his life but rich rancher Lady Dolly Weaver. Kayce is working with Monica's stallion in the pen when she does. What part of Evolve or Die do you not understand? He asks the kicking horse, so the parallels are obvious. He's still processing the loss of Monica. Dolly is pushing hard for him to start a new chapter with her, and all of this is happening with a whole barn's worth of Montana-drenched, get back on the horse dialogue. Did we catch the shadow of a half grin? That's about all Kayce gives in terms of flirting. But Dolly does enough for the both of them. And he doesn't say no when she asks for an East Camp backcountry tour. Try and keep up. Almost every aspect of relationships that might make them feel like a lot of effort is covered in Marshals Season 1 Episode 7 Family Business, including why people never trust after ending a relationship. The case this week reflects the lives of the protagonists, with some attempting to start new relationships and others thinking back on previous ones. Kayce has already caught someone else's attention, and she is hell-bent on getting him, but this case is to be approached with caution. While he might have begun to accept that Monica is gone, he's not ready to let someone else in yet. It would feel like he's replacing her, and that can feel like betrayal. People do get lonely, and even the strongest of men could use someone to share their recent fears with. It makes the burden feel less heavy. And while Monica was great at giving advice, she's no longer here. This lady does not mean anything bad. It was a situation that went in the wrong direction. Opening your heart to something new is not betrayal, it's enrichment. No one can ever replace Monica, but Kayce can create space for someone new. Whether that happens remains to be seen, because there's always the Tate side of things, and he never minces words. Meanwhile, we've caught glimpses of Belle's life, but everyone comes out in the open at this hour. I knew her marriage took a hit when she was working undercover, but I just had no idea it was this bad. Hearing her tell Pete about the arrangement she has with her husband nearly knocked the wind out of me. And while that arrangement might work for a while, it's not the best approach.
Last week, Marshals ended on a major cliffhanger, the show's first, to be continued, and this week they're back to live up to their promise, wrapping up the case of the 10 Broken Rock Reservation girls who have been trafficked, as well as a few more personal storylines for the team. For the last several weeks, mentions have been made about a ceremony honoring people from the reservation who have died, including Kayce's late wife Monica. This week, the time has finally come, and on the 1-year anniversary of Monica's death. Naturally, tensions are running especially high at the Dutton house, where Kayce is ignoring his own grief by working on the case of Haley, a young friend of Tate's who he let return to the people trafficking her last week in the hopes of preventing other girls from dying. Tate believes that Monica's spirit led them to find Haley in the first place, and that getting her back would be a form of honoring Monica, so suffice to say he's none too pleased at his father's lack of progress. Tate's not the only one, either. Miles is still furious with Kayce for letting Haley go and has been putting off notifying the mother of one of the other missing girls, Ava, after the team discovered last week that Ava had been killed. Cal insists that he and Miles make the notification today while Belle and Andrea work on getting back on the trail of the girls after their raid of the camper they believed the girls to be transported in came up dry last week. With the girls returned to their families, this week's theme of closure comes full circle as Kayce and Tate, later followed by the team, head to Broken Rock for the memorial ceremony. Miles is greeted warmly by many members of the tribe, seemingly putting to bed his concerns that he's unwelcome on the reservation, and Ava's mom thanks him for allowing her to finally begin grieving. Kayce gets a bit of a pep talk from Rainwater as well as Monica's father, and though he insists he's only there to support Tate, the episode ends with him joining in on the ceremony, sharing his wife's favorite necklace with his son, and admitting, "Maybe it's time I start letting go."
Start with Foghorn Leghorn over here. Chief Deputy U.S. Marshal Harry Gifford Stetson seems like it grows a size every time he shows up at team headquarters, but in episode 4 of Marshals, The Gathering Storm, it's no closer to containing his bullshit. Gifford has seized on a complaint against Kayce Dutton by Randall Clegg as a way to prosecute Kayce's entire family. Clegg, whose own fam just hurt innocent people at a peaceful protest. Clegg, whose sons fired on federal agents and tried to blow them up with IEDs. The only thing more laughable than Gifford's boner to bust Kayce over some Kirkland brand grudge against his late father is how badly Marshals wants to rent pieces of used drama from Yellowstone's past. Just like last week, this episode of Marshals goes on a wayward tangent into ancient Sheridan-Overse history, bringing up Season 2 of Yellowstone, and John and Kayce Dutton's battle with a developer who hired a backwoods militia to kidnap Tate Dutton. Marshals is the first procedural in Yellowstone's universe. And for 3 episodes, it has evaded every procedural trap that makes many of them feel underwhelming when the formula is the same. The conflict here is less about the case and more about Kayce's position on the team. Marshal Guilford has made it clear that Kayce is a ticking time bomb, and when he explodes, he'll take down everyone with him. His return reinforces this thesis as he goes after Kayce hard, so much so that it feels like he is being irrational. On the one hand, one can see where he's coming from because the Dutton family history speaks for itself at abuse of office, abuse of power, and several other questionable things that have happened over the past several years. Guilford speaks to the rational part of me that doesn't regard Kayce as the perfect protagonist. Sure, I like the guy, but he's not exactly Ted Lasso. He has lacked direction his entire life, picking up causes here and there that make him feel fulfilled for a little while before he inevitably realizes he was being manipulated. Guilford is right to be skeptical, but unfortunately, he's too little too late. Marshals put a spotlight on the real-life plight of indigenous families searching for missing women and girls in Season 1 Episode 5, which aired on Sunday, March 29th, on CBS. Tate Dutton, Brecken Merrill, called it a fitting way to honor his late mother, Monica Dutton, Kelsey Asbill, who fought to find a missing indigenous woman and child in Yellowstone Season 3 Episode 6 and remained an advocate for this cause in the time after. This episode gave an update on Monica's advocacy in the final months of her life. As revealed in the series premiere, Monica died of cancer before the plot of Marshals began. Warning, spoilers for Marshals Season 1 Episode 5 ahead. The problem with that is that the police force is severely lacking in resources, so many missing indigenous women and girls stay missing for years. With Belle and Andrea's help, Kayce and Miles went rogue to find the man who was using social media to groom teenage girls from the residential and deliver them to a man called Bledsoe, who was suspected of running a sex trafficking ring. They hid their Marshals badges in their car, captured the middleman, and passed him off to Mo. Mo brings plenty, for punishment. That's precisely what we got in at A Gathering Storm, as dueling plotlines gave several members of the team a chance to develop in more rounded ways. Whether or not the characters will choose to follow through on them all remains to be seen. Here's what you missed on this week's episode. The primary plot of this week was divided among 2 cases. On one side, Harry, the head of the Marshal's office, tasks most of the team with an investigation into one of their own, Kayce, of course. It seems that Clegg, the potential seasoned big bad who was introduced last week, has filed a complaint with the Department of Justice saying that his son was actually unarmed when Kayce shot him in Episode 3. As such, Kayce is benched. This will last approximately 30 seconds, while Andrea leads Belle and Miles in their own investigation of the shooting to try and get out in front of the DOJ inquiry. The team feels openly conflicted about this, with Belle and Miles clearly on Kayce's side, while Andrea is in the awkward position of having to choose her loyalties. Harry wants her to dig up some reason to kick Kayce off of the team before the DOJ uncovers any Dutton family skeletons, not quite going so far as telling her to manufacture evidence, but implying heavily that her ability to get rid of Kayce could result in her much hoped-for transfer back to her old team in DC. There's, frankly, a lot of runaround in this plotline as the team tries variously to track down any motive Kayce would have to kill Clegg's son. Clegg threatens to go to the press, an old Yellowstone plotline involving Tate's kidnapping is discussed, and Harry attempts to railroad Kayce on some very thin evidence, all of which I'm just going to hand-wave away for the moment as it ends up feeling like much ado about nothing. In the end, when the team manages to turn up some trail cameras that recorded a video proving that Kayce was in the right all along, convenient. Kayce's badge is saved. The team all feel bad for investigating him, even though it was literally their jobs. Harry is pissed off at Andrea, but Andrea feels the same way and warns him never to manipulate her like that again. On the other side of this week's plot are Kayce and Cal, who, truly 30 seconds after Harry tells Kayce he can't work cases, head out on a search and rescue operation with the Rangers. A rich local landowner and his helicopter pilot have disappeared amidst high winds and dangerous weather. The guys head out on horseback to search part of the grid, in case you were worried that the helicopter might have crashed in any other sector, don't, and also for some good old manly bonding time amidst discussions about Kayce's issues with rich guys who buy lots of ranch land and acting like king of the valley, daddy issues, whether Kayce killing Clegg's son was justified, and another lecture about Kayce not making friends with the team. They manage to get held at gunpoint by a scruffy man who's living off the grid in the middle of the woods. Scruffy man is no match for Kayce, naturally, but the guys don't have time to deal with him because they can see the smoke from where the helicopter crashed, so they tell him to go to the ranger station and turn himself in, likely. At the crash site, they find the rich rancher, Tom Weaver, injured, and his pilot near death. The weather is getting worse, so they're going to have to attempt to get both parties back to the ranger station by horseback, only no, actually, they won't because, to quote my notes, oh, dip. A bear. Despite how dramatic that seems, the bear is scared off in short order, though not before jostling the helicopter enough to exacerbate the pilot's injuries, resulting in the death. Kayce blames Weaver for having them out surveying land in the weather, but Weaver clearly feels guilty and they have a long talk about living in their father's shadows, so Kayce forgives him, daddy issues again. Calvin and Miles manage to get Weaver out safely, though not before Scruffy Man returns, shocking, to steal their supplies and try to shoot them. Kayce goes to visit Weaver in the hospital afterwards, where he provides him with some handy ranching information. Weaver insists on lending him some ranch hands as repayment for saving his life, and Weaver's beautiful blonde daughter, Dolly, visibly contemplates NSFW ways she could also show her gratitude, having apparently taken Cal's nagging about. Hanging out with the team to heart, Kayce joins them all at the bar, with Dolly. As Andrea says, I know what grateful looks like, and that's not how she's eyeing you. Saddle up, cowboy. In the final moments of the episode, Dolly corners Kayce up, gently teasing him about being introverted, and tries to cajole him into showing her what Montana has to offer. Kayce says, maybe. For the second week in a row, there's no Tate in the episode. There are a few fun character details in this episode that don't quite come to anything, but might be seeds for the future, including, Andrea went to law school, though she didn't graduate, Belle plays golf, and gambles on it, Miles ghosted a woman who also goes to their bar. Okay, not so much for Miles this episode. Easily the most interesting side tidbit of the episode came toward the end when Calvin reveals that Maddie, the bartender he's seemingly been trying to win over all season, is, in fact, his daughter. He took the placement on the team to be closer to her, but now she doesn't want anything to do with him because, well, he was a crappy father for 20 years. Fair enough. I realize this is entirely beside the point of the series, but the show keeps bringing it up and forcing me to think about it. Kayce says he has 300 pairs, that's 300 cows with calves, for those who weren't raised in cattle country. Weaver says he's going to lend Kayce some ranch hands to deal with said cattle. Kayce has previously said that Rip also got his some ranch hands. So where the heck are these ranch hands? Why are they never around? Why is this show forcing me to think about animal husbandry when it clearly just wants to run around the woods and shoot guns? This will last approximately 30 seconds, while Andrea leads Belle and Miles in their own investigation of the shooting to try and get out in front of the DOJ inquiry. The team feels openly conflicted about this, with Belle and Miles clearly on Kayce's side, while Andrea is in the awkward position of having to choose her loyalties. Harry wants her to dig up some reason to kick Kayce off of the team before the DOJ uncovers any Dutton family skeletons, not quite going so far as telling her to manufacture evidence, but implying heavily that her ability to get rid of Kayce could result in her much hoped-for transfer back to her old team in DC. There's, frankly, a lot of run-around in this plotline as the team tries variously to track down any motive Kayce would have to kill Clegg's son. Clegg threatens to go to the press, an old Yellowstone plotline involving Tate's kidnapping is discussed, and Harry attempts to railroad Kayce on some very thin evidence, all of which I'm just going to hand-wave away for the moment as it ends up feeling like much ado about nothing. In the end, when the team manages to turn up some trail cameras that recorded a video proving that Kayce was in the right all along, convenient. Kayce's badge is saved. The team all feel bad for investigating him, even though it was literally their jobs. Harry is pissed off at Andrea, but Andrea feels the same way and warns him never to manipulate her like that again. On the other side of this week's plot are Kayce and Cal, who, Truly 30 seconds after Harry tells Kayce he can't work, Kayce's head out on a search and rescue operation with the Rangers. A rich local landowner and his helicopter pilot have disappeared amidst high winds and dangerous weather.